Let's dive into one of the absolute weirdest and most terrifying medical mysteries in all of history. We're talking about a time when an entire city was hit by an unstoppable, deadly urge to just dance. Okay, so picture this. The year is 1518. We're in Strasbourg, part of the Holy Roman Empire. It is a miserably hot summer, and things are not good. People are starving from a massive famine, disease is everywhere, and the political situation is a total mess. The whole city is basically a powder keg of stress and anxiety, just waiting for something to set it off. And that spark, it came from a woman named Fra Troffea. One day, she just walked out into the street and started to dance. But this wasn't a party, not even close. People who saw it said it was violent, a horrifying, uncontrolled thrashing. Her eyes were apparently filled with terror as her own body moved completely against her will. She was a prisoner in her own skin, begging for it all to stop. What began with this one woman's terrifying ordeal was about to explode into a full-blown epidemic. But this was a plague like nothing anyone had ever seen before. It wasn't attacking the body, it was attacking the mind. And you won't believe how fast this thing spread. I mean, within a single week, more than 30 people were trapped in this involuntary, hellish dance. And in just 1 month, that number skyrocketed to over 400 people. The entire city was spiraling into a full-blown panic. And here's the really creepy part. This wasn't random. It seemed to spread by sight. People who just stood and watched the dancers for too long, or family members who were trying to help their loved ones, would suddenly just start dancing too. It was as if the idea of the dance was somehow becoming a real physical disease. A doctor who was visiting Strasbourg at the time, a Dr. Jan Weyer, he really nailed the sheer psychological horror of it all. He knew this wasn't some normal illness. He said it was something that infected the soul, spreading from the eye to the mind and then to the limbs. So the city officials are freaking out, right? They see this crisis spiraling out of control, and they have to do something. But their solution, based on the medical knowledge they had back then, would turn out to be one of the worst public health decisions maybe ever. You know, from their point of view, their logic kind of made sense. They diagnosed the problem as hot blood, basically a kind of fever. So what was the prescription? Well, more dancing, of course. They figured if the dancers just kept moving, they'd literally sweat the sickness out. So they actually built a huge wooden stage, hired professional musicians, and even paid healthy dancers to keep the afflicted moving. This cure was like throwing gasoline on a fire. The constant music just made the compulsions worse, and the stage became this giant spectacle that drew in even more onlookers, who then got infected. The number of dancers exploded from around 30 to over 400. The city square had literally turned into a scene from a nightmare. I mean, the human body just isn't built for that. People started dying. They were having heart attacks, strokes, or just dying from pure exhaustion. The physician Paracelsus wrote about dancers whose feet were worn down to bloody stumps, their joints dislocated from the endless violent motion. It's just horrific. Okay, so the big question is, what on earth was going on here? How do you even begin to explain something like this? Well, the people back in the 16th century and modern scientists have come up with some pretty different ideas, and each one tells you a lot about the world they lived in. Back then, the explanations were what you might expect: demonic possession, a witch's curse, or, the slightly more scientific hot blood theory. Some even thought it was poisoning from a fungus on rye bread. But today, we look at it through the lens of psychology and neurology. The leading theories have names like mass psychogenic illness and social contagion. So mass psychogenic illness is basically a collective stress response. Imagine the entire city of Strasbourg as a pressure cooker filled with the steam of famine, disease, and fear. This dancing plague, it was the pot exploding. It's psychological trauma becoming real, physical symptoms. And the craziest part is that it spreads just by seeing someone else with it. But maybe the most chilling theory of all is something called social contagion. This is the idea that behaviors and even emotions can spread through a crowd just like a virus. It suggests the dancing plague might have been one of the first times in history we ever saw an idea go viral, literally, physically viral. So how did this nightmare finally stop? Well, the plague did eventually end, but the way it ended was almost as bizarre as how it started, and it left behind some deep, lasting scars on everyone it touched. After their more dancing cure failed so spectacularly, the authorities tried a completely different tactic. They gathered up the remaining dancers and forced them on a pilgrimage to a shrine for St. Vitus, who, believe it or not, was the patron saint you prayed to for dancing and neurological disorders. And, well, it worked. As the dancers were brought to the altar, they slowed down, and one by one, they stopped. But the story doesn't end there. The survivors were left with horrible PTSD and permanent injuries. The city itself was so traumatized, it actually banned public dancing for years. Think about that. The economy was devastated, they lost almost 15% of their adult population, and the story spread all over Europe, sparking fear and even smaller copycat outbreaks for decades to come. Now, it is so easy to look back at this and think, well, that was a long time ago, people were superstitious, it could never happen now. But what if it could? What if the same forces that made people dance in 1518 are still around today, just wearing a different costume? Think about the core ingredients here. You have a community under extreme stress. You have a physical behavior that manifests from that stress, and you have it spreading through simple observation. Okay, hold that thought. Now, let's fast forward to 2011. Leroy, New York. A small group of teenage girls suddenly, and without any medical explanation, developed uncontrollable twitches and vocal tics. And guess what? It spread through their social circle. Doctors called it a modern outbreak of mass psychogenic illness. Sound familiar? And that brings us right to our own doorstep. Think about viral challenges on social media. An idea, sometimes a bizarre or dangerous one, spreads through observation, and people feel this intense, almost overwhelming compulsion to join in. The music is different, the stage is digital, but the basic mechanism, it's eerily the same. Back in 1518, an idea like this could only spread as fast as a person could walk or a horse could run. Today, ideas, emotions, and behaviors spread across the entire globe at the speed of light. Our hyperconnectivity doesn't necessarily make us safer from this stuff. It might actually make us more vulnerable. The dancing plague of Strasbourg is this incredible, stark reminder that the line between our own thoughts and the thoughts of the crowd can be terrifyingly thin. It proves that when the conditions are right, enough stress, enough pressure, our minds are susceptible to these strange contagions. The dancers are gone, but that core human wiring is still in all of us. So it leaves us with a pretty unsettling question. What form will the next dance take? And when it starts, will we even realize we're dancing?